Howdy folks, today we're going to be creating this super simple, super quick snake animation technique in Blender 4.2 using only two objects. Creating these type of fluid organic animations can be a challenge even for experienced CGI artists, but this one is not meant for close-up detailed shots, but distant scenes where you want something slithering in the background. We'll create a simple low polygon mesh, texture it, and then animate it using Blender's built-in Curve Modifier. This method's been around for a while. I remember doing it in 3D Max many years ago, but I haven't seen any tutorials on it for Blender. The snake's movement is not 100% biologically accurate, but it looks good enough in the background to pass off as being very snake-like. You could use this method for any mesh that has a fluid, undulating type of movement. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. I'll be using Blender 4.2 with the Eevee render engine. All of my keystrokes today will be down here on the lower left. So let's begin by selecting and deleting the default cube. Shift A will add a mesh, cylinder, and we'll scale that cylinder to a radius of 0.05, and the depth or the length of the snake will be 2 meters. Tab into edit mode, 3, side view, R rotate, 90 degrees, and we'll subdivide up this mesh with the loop cut tool. And what we want to do is divide up the mesh so that when we go to start sculpting it, we'll be able to shape it more heavily toward the ends. Something about like this will work. So now we'll use the scale tool, and we'll turn on proportional editing up here. Go into wireframe so we can select all sides of the mesh, and we'll start here with the tail, and we'll scale that. We'll get it down to a nice taper like a snake's body would be. We'll keep scaling it. Get it something about like this. A nice taper there, and then we'll shape the head. And what I might want to do is maybe add another loop cut here, or two. We can select the loops using the Alt key. You can click and it selects the whole loop, and we'll start scaling and shaping. Now scrolling the mouse wheel will reduce the size of the influence circle of the proportional editor. Just keep scaling, getting it down to be something like a snake's head. I probably should have reference images pulled up, but I don't. So we'll keep selecting vertices and moving around, scaling, to just get a shape that is going to be like a viper head. Kind of a longer snout. Now this is a side view here, and what we're going to want to do is move to the top view to finish this off. 7 on the keyboard will take you to the top view. And you can see it's getting close. It's not quite there yet. Just keep scaling. Getting this in a little bit more. And this is going to be a rough model of a snake. This is something you're going to see off in the distance. It's not meant for close-up hyper-realism. This just has to look snake-like, kind of give you that idea that it's a snake. Go into solid shading here, do a little bit more shaping, clicking on the vertices, hitting G, which is the grab and move tool in Blender. Just keep shaping it. Z axis, and we can tab into edit or out of edit mode and into object mode and get an idea of what we have. You can right click and hit shade smooth. And I think it's getting fairly close to what I had done on the previous model. I can see the tail needs a little bit more tapering, so I'll tab back into edit mode. Select that loop, scale it down, get it to about a point. We don't want to close it off though. One last thing we want to do before we start texturing is to add some more loop cuts so that when the snake is twisting and bending around the curve, that it has enough small faces that it looks smooth. So we'll go back and use the loop cut tool, just add them in, dividing up each one of these areas several times. And this way we can kind of control the amount of faces on this so it doesn't get too heavy of a polygon mesh. With that, I think we're about ready to start texturing. Add a few more here, and that's about right. So we'll tab back into object mode, have a look here. Looks pretty good. So let's start texturing. Now to do that, you would select the mesh, then you would go up here into the texture paint mode. And this right here has been really automated and is really a nice function of the newer blenders. And all you have to do to start creating and painting textures is to click up here on the texture slots, and you go and add, and it will prompt you here with a dialog of the different type of shaders that you would use in the shaders. And what we're going to start here with is the base color. And we're going to take this 1024 pixels and we're going to double it just so we get a decent texture. Do that, you can hit tab, or maybe not. So 2048 by 2048, and we'll make the color something like a deep brown. The color up here is slightly more toward the green. Something about like that. And that will be the base color that we'll paint on. And there we have the base. And what we're going to do now is create a texture for the paintbrush to use. Now for the texture, I went and found a pretty decent one on sharetextures.com. It has a Creative Commons license, so it's free to use, free to distribute, with no commercial license for it. But you can really use any seamless snake texture you find. You can even go and use an AI platform, plug in the text, seamless snake skin texture or something, and have created that way. But to do that, you would go down here to the texture tab and you would search for it here in the little search button and pull that up. Now that we have the texture set up and ready to go, it's time to go back to edit mode. And what we're going to do is unwrap this, and we're going to unwrap it quickly So hit A, select all, U to unwrap, and we're going to use the Smart UV project or project. Not sure which it is there, but click to unwrap, and down here on my other window I will open up the UV editor, and I can see my unwrapped mesh. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it all, I'm going to rotate it with the R command, and I want to maximize the size of this. So I'm going to scale it, select it all, scale, so I get as much as I can to maximize that 2048 texture. So those scales will be really tiny and they'll get pixelated. That's not bad right there. So with that done, mesh is unwrapped, it's ready to paint. So we'll go back up here, we'll go out of edit mode and back into texture paint. Now that we're back in texture paint and everything is all set up, it's time to just start painting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 7 on the keyboard for a top view and zoom in about like this and just start painting all sides. And I realize this is not anatomically accurate, but for this model, which is meant to be viewed from a distance, it shouldn't really matter. As you can see, that was quick and easy. Got it all painted up. And what I want to do is go down here to my other window and go into the shader editor. And as you can see, the texture paint feature, when we set up that texture up here with the plus sign, it automatically built our nodes. So what I want to do is add a bump map, and to do that it will be under the vector. So add a bump in here, and to convert that color image to black and white for the bump map to read, I'll go to the RGB to BW, black and white. So this converts the color to black and white, so the bump map can interpret that data. And I'm going to set the strength for the bump mapping to 0.25 and the distance to 0.2. The bump mapping is really strong, so you probably want to bump it down. And then we'll connect the normal to the normal of the principled BSD shader. With that done, it is textured and I can see the bump strength, so time to move on to animating this thing. One thing I did forget to do was add the eyes, so I'll do that quickly here by going down to the texture properties. I've added an image that I had generated with Copilot AI. I typed something like snake eye in the prompt and it generated this image, and I loaded it down here in the texture properties, and I'll go back to the brush, and instead of tiled this time we'll set it to stencil. And what stencil will do, will bring that image into and around the model, and you can use your right mouse button to move that around, scale it up and down by holding the shift key and the right mouse button. But we'll move it about here, and I got the mirrored around, and I've got the paint mirroring going, so it mirrored it on the other side. Now I'll take the clone tool here, I'll just kind of clean that up since it came in with a green. You can use the Alt key to sample. Just go around here, tighten it up a little bit, just kind of get rid of that green, and did it on both sides, so good. Snake has eyes. When you're done painting, be sure to come up here to the texture slot control and click on that and go down to save all images before you move on, and that will save it. Also be sure to periodically keep saving your files by either hitting Control S or going up here to the file save up at the top there. Next step is to move on to the curve path that will allow this to be animated. And to do that, we will go back to object mode, Shift A, we'll go to curve, and we will select the path curve, 7 on the keyboard to get a top view. Zoom out, rotate R, 90 degrees, tab into edit mode, and we want to scale this up by 5. And with all that selected, we're now going to subdivide these segments by going up to segments, subdivide. And those segments down here will be changed to 8. Click off over into the blank space. Select the first vertex down here. Hit A for all to select all the vertices. And we'll automate this process of selecting every other one by going up to select, checker deselect here. And now we've got every other vertex selected on this chain. With all of them selected, hit G, and we're going to shape the squiggly path that the snake will follow, and you can do that by hitting X with everything selected, and it'll give you a movement in the X direction, and just pull it out to something about like this, to where it looks like a squiggly path when you zoom in. And with them all selected and squiggly, hit A to select them all. With them all selected, what we want to do is create a starting point for the snake's path. And as we can see, the snake's head is here, so he's going to be moving in this direction toward the bottom of the screen. So with all selected here in top view, we'll hit G, Y to move it down. And what we want to do is get this vertex somewhere along the center of the world origin here. And you can move it back and forth a few times, get it somewhere about there. And now we want to shape a starting path for the snake here. Hit G, we'll move it over here on the X-axis to get it kind of centered. And we'll click on this first vertex, hit G to move it over here. We're going to create a gentle, more of a straighter entry point into this path for the snake. So we'll click on these and just kind of shape it, get something about like that. And with that, we have the path created for the snake. So now let's animate it. Hit Tab to go back into object mode. And in object mode, we'll click on the snake and go over here to your modifiers. And under modifiers, we're going to add a deform modifier. And that is going to be the curve. And you'll select the eyedropper here, which as the curve object will be that path that we just modified. You click on that. And we're spinning here. And so what we've done is we've now attached the snake to the path, and it's going to want to bend and twist following this path as we move it. And to do that, all you need to do is hit G and Y to move it in the Y axis. And so now we have the animated snake. So we'll switch to the timeline down here on the lower window. And what we're going to do is start at the first frame, 1. If yours isn't there, you can click here to move it in that direction. And to start animating this, all we want to do is insert a keyframe, and that keyframe is going to load down here in the timeline. You'll see it. You'll hit I to enter that first keyframe, and we'll hit GY. We'll move the snake all the way down here to the end somewhere, and we'll click down here to the end by using this forward button, and jump back to the first frame because I keyframed it. So let's do that again. G, Y, move down to the end, and with it moved down to the end, you want to hit I again to lock that keyframe. So now when you hit the space bar, the snake is going to follow that path in its animation. And you could see it going. And that is it for the animation. You can go in and you can click on this path, and you can tab back into edit mode, and you could modify that path. You can move things around. Change the trajectory a little bit here and there. It's however you want to do it here. You can customize it to the scene that you've created. Use your proportional editor to kind of make gentle twists and turns. And you want to do all this in the top view by hitting the 7 on the keypad. That way it is moving directly in the X and Y axes. Tab back into edit mode. We can view the animation. Snake's running along here. To finish out your scene, we can add ground here by going to Shift A, and we'll add a plane just to give it something to move on. 7 top view, and we'll scale this up large enough to cover the area of the path. And now the snake has ground to move on, and you can go in and you can add a texture here under the shader editor. Click on new. Under base color, we'll click on this yellow dot. It'll give us some options for the textures. We'll click on image texture, and I'm going to go here to open to a texture that I downloaded from polyhaven.com. It is also a free to use source. Open that texture, and now we have ground. Of course, ground is rough, so we want to bump the roughness all the way up. And now the snake has got a desert here to move in. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share for more content like this. It's the only way to gauge if there's interest or not. And let me know down in the comment sections if you have any questions, or if you possibly would like a follow-up video on creating a world for this snake. Until next time, bye friends.